don't think I've ever done this many lives in a week in my life. What's going on with the collar here? Pardon the butterfly collar. I don't know what it's doing, but whatever. Um, yeah, I've never done this many lives in a week in my life, so maybe y'all are getting sick of me. I'm getting sick of myself, but I feel like these conversations have to be had. As the phone calls are ringing, the phone calls are coming in. I'm talking shop to people who have been operatives and who have been in politics in Boston for a long time, and the same question keeps coming up. And we're trying not to see history repeat itself if it's not good history. So I wanted to talk a little bit. Yeah, exactly. I'm back again. It's getting good to me, Leon. No, but it's important before things start to get out of control. I want to at least try to give people enough information that they can kind of set their own standards. I am really bothered by the fact my caller wants to do whatever it wants. There we go. So there's this story about splitting the vote versus solidarity. What's up, James? I need to speak to you. Your name came up a couple of times. Christian, you too. I need to speak to both of y'all either tonight or tomorrow because y'all are integral parts of what I'm about to talk about. And it can't happen without people like you and more people like us. So, depending on when you listen, people have been talking about the race from 2013, right? The mayor's race in 2013. And let me pay attention. I'm going to go slow today because I want to pay attention to these comments. Sometimes I miss the comments and we can't have a full dialogue. I want to make sure I have a full dialogue. So first I want to remind people that the power is in the people and it's not in the candidate. And that message seems to have gotten lost in the 2013 race, and since everybody's worried about repeating the splitting of the vote. Votes are going to split no matter what. Now, what's more important than worrying about which candidate can solidify a certain block of votes, whether it's the black vote, whether it's the women's vote. Like, people start to treat these groups as if they're monoliths, right? As if they're all going to go the same direction. Right now there's two women in the race that have declared that they're going to run for mayor. So I'm just going to start with the mayor's race, and I'm going to kind of leave it there, and everybody else can apply it as we go forward. And hopefully we'll have many more conversations, hopefully with you gentlemen involved as well. I'm not of the style of asking a candidate not to run. Now, truth be told, to run for office, sometimes it's ego-driven. And I'm not saying it like it's a bad thing. Ego is necessary in politics. You need to believe in yourself that you can lead others and that other people like you enough to elect you. Otherwise, if you don't have an ego, you need a healthy ego to be able to believe that you can stand in front of others and people should follow you. Now, it can get out of control. You can step into the deep water and you don't know how deep it goes, and next thing you know, you're over your head. But I think you need a healthy ego. So I'm not of the ilk of asking people, stay out of the race because you're going to split the vote too many ways. We can only have one black candidate, two black candidates, three black candidates, whatever. I try to be open-minded enough, at least in the past, to say that we don't necessarily need a black mayor for things to get better for black people in Boston. Truth be told, I'm not sure if that's true. I believe that the income inequality and some of the social ills we face are because people are tribal. And I've said this before on different podcasts on stillreppin.com and other places, that people are tribal. People are going to take care of those closest to them. They're going to take care of their family first. They're going to take care of their friends next. They're going to take care of their community after that. And then it's going to slowly ripple or trickle down from there. And the trickle down is usually not enough to water the grassroots of everybody else that needs the water. So that being said, I'm starting to believe that for things to change for black people in Boston, you're either going to need a black mayor, or you're going to need a very effective mayor that understands and has a plan to address the issues that face black people in Boston. And I'm going to say black people in Boston because they've been there forever, and I believe that if you fix the social ills of the majority of black people in Boston, you will also be helping the brown people in Boston. You'll be helping the working class people in Boston, whether you're Latino, whether you have Asian, different ethnicities. But the issues that hit hardest in society hit black people and hit black communities. So that's where I'm focusing. So in our communities, we get worried that, if we have too many black people in the race, then we're going to split the vote, right? Everybody's heard that before. There's ways that we can address that as a community. And I believe, this is my opinion I'm sharing with you, and I own my opinion, I don't know about everybody else's, but the issue is how we stick together as a community. So let me give you an experience of mine. Let me give you some real facts. If election day was tomorrow, right, Mayor Walsh leaves, and the election was held tomorrow, and it was between Councilor Michelle Wu and Councilor Andrea Campbell. The day after that, Councilor Michelle Wu would be mayor. That's it. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. You might like one more than the other. You might be on one team. You might be undecided. But this is just math. Councilor Wu is an at-large councilor. I think on a regular, since she's been in her office for as long as Mayor Walsh has been mayor, since 2013, right? They were elected in 2013, came on in 2014. So she averages about 40,000 votes or more per election cycle. That's 40,000 people that know who she is. That not only do they know who she is, but they voted for her. 1 out of 4 people, they had 4 votes, they used 1 on Michelle Wu. Councilor Campbell has been in office in a District 4 seat since, I think, 2013. She came in the same time, because that's when Councilor Yancey ran for mayor and didn't win mayor, and he gave up his seat as well, was defeated in that District 4 race. So they have the same amount of tenure, but only about 5,000 or 6,000 people vote in a district race. So all things being equal, with their numbers and fundraising being equal, Michelle Wu has the advantage. Now let's say you think that Michelle Wu is not the best candidate for you. Let's say you believe that you, based on her work or whatever the case may be, you want a different candidate. 2015, thank you, Darren. You see endorsements already coming in, and like I said, those endorsements are not based on who's going to serve your community necessarily the best. Those endorsements are coming in based on personal relationships. Now, when you get a flyer or you see online an endorsement, it'll say, that person saying, I believe that this person will be the best leader to move us forward. Because of what I've seen, right? It's a personal endorsement. It's like, I've tasted their chocolate chip cookies, and they're my favorite chocolate chip cookies in the whole world. Now, they might not be your favorite chocolate chip cookies, but that person's saying that you should try them because they like them. Even with the atmosphere, I'm going to address, Christian, that's a good question. The atmosphere cuts a lot of different ways, and you never know what's in people's head. I would say that you see a movement across the country and in different cities for black women to rise up to take leadership roles where they have been denied before, or blocked out of them before, or not embraced as openly. So maybe that does. But these 2 women have a very similar background. They both come from working class backgrounds. They're both Ivy League educated. I believe they're both attorneys. So, I don't want to make their deciding factor skin tone, how much melanin they have in their skin. Priscilla, there's a lot of people in the race, but it's an easy way to weed them out. And that's if those of us that are concerned do our due diligence. Now, I just had a wonderful conversation with my brother Darren. We just kicked it for about an hour and 16 minutes, I believe, was on the timer when we hung up. And we were just talking shop and really talking about it. And I'm thinking about, I thought about times when both of us have experience running for office. You fill out endorsement forms, right? Like whether the union gives it to you, a special interest group around environment, police officer union, whether it's the BPPA or the Superior Federation officers, they give you an endorsement form. This endorsement form is created by their group. Their members have decided what causes are most important to them, and they want to ask you what you're going to do about their issues. Now, on these endorsement forms, they don't ask you about things that you cannot do. You know what I mean? When I'm running for state representative, they're not asking me if I can keep the streets clean, because that's not what a state representative does. They're asking me, will you vote for this bill that came to the House before? Will you support increasing this budget line item for the Quinn bill or for training of police officers that's going to cost $1.5 million? Will you support this bill, yes or no? I get the questionnaire. My opponent gets the same questionnaire, and we have to decide whether we're going to make a promise to this group, this community, based on what they want, and based on our values. There is no reason, in my opinion, there's no reason that our communities can't create the same kind of questionnaire. And I would like to be part of, I've talked to Priscilla today as well. I've been talking to a lot of people, and I'm glad because this is the kind of energy we need in the city. I'm looking to speak to some young people to make sure that their voices are heard. And I'm not trying to be the kingmaker. I just want to help facilitate this conversation and make sure that the conversation is had. That way, when it's all said and done, it's up to the people to make their decision. But if there's a question there that we can come together, and it doesn't have to be a lengthy one, but it has to be informed by people of different generations, of different communities, different interests. It needs to have all the issues that we know about. And we probably have so many issues that we'd have to boil it down and make it a little bit more simple and make sure that it's germane to what the mayor of Boston can and cannot do. And you simply go down, whether it's 15 questions, 20 questions, even if it's a 30-page questionnaire that the community has informed. Carrie Mays, I'm looking to talk to her we got a time scheduled tomorrow. See, this is what I like. I'm glad the energy is connecting because this is how we have to build it. Chip Greenwich is holding a Zoom meeting tomorrow after the State of the City address so people can continue this conversation. We need to have this conversation early because people are already, the ball is rolling. The ball is rolling. So now, if I'm just putting this idea out here because I feel like if we're being transparent about it, it keeps everybody on the level. I am not pledged to support any current mayoral candidate. I have not been asked to. I have not donated any money. I have not made any promises, and nor have any promises been made to me. If I had done one of those things, I would announce it, and I would probably recuse myself from the process. That way nobody thinks that the process would be unfair. So that would be my expectation. If I'm part of building a coalition around creating this kind of community questionnaire, that everybody has the decency to be honest about their allegiances, whether they've endorsed, whether that's their cousin, whether that's their auntie, whatever the case may be. I think we should be transparent because this is bigger than people, individual people. This is about the life of our community, the children in our community, the elders in our community, the young professionals in our community, those of us that need the most help from these programs that the mayor's office can provide. This is what it's about. So you have a questionnaire. You talk to residents tell you what their top concerns are. You take a long list of them and you put them together and you put 20 people in a room after you've collected all these from different sources, whether it's groups like Teen Empowerment, whether it's the Central Boston Elders, whether it's ward committees. You get all this input and you boil it down to, what are the top 30 things that impact everything else. Now you fill out a questionnaire that's endorsed and supported by the community. Now, normally, this is what I've heard and when I was elected official. Yes, we must create our own agenda. It has to be from the community, and the community has to buy into it. That's where the power is. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. It becomes a special interest group, and it should not be that. Usually we have people say, poor communities don't have access to technology, and that's definitely true. That's definitely true. But there are huge segments of us. Everybody we know is carrying around one of these, right? So many of us have internet access. Many of us can call in to a Zoom meeting or be visible on a Zoom meeting that there's really not too much of an excuse. We're not going to get to every corner of the community, but you should be able to collect enough of the masses to get a good segment. And then once that is let me make sure I'm reading these comments. They need a community part. Exactly. Residents shaping the questions. Now the questions are going to come far and wide, right? But it's the groups. The internal group, is their responsibility to boil it down and make sure that they're germane and specific so that they can fit on a questionnaire. Now, I'm just going to build it as if there's only 2 candidates in the race right now. Now, we know there's going to be more. There's going to be 4, 5, and 6, and it's not going to just be a black woman and an Asian woman. There might be white men, there might be black men, there might be people of different ethnic descent, but they get the same questionnaire because it's from the same communities and have the same community concerns. Now, they fill out that questionnaire, and out of 30 questions, the community knows how many answers, or even if you don't know how, you can score it yourself. They answer the questionnaire, that questionnaire comes back, and the same way it came in from the community, it has to go back out to the community. So the same process, the participatory process that created the questionnaire, then reverses and sends the information back out into the community, right? And so it almost works the same way as a campaign. There might be the person on the block might get to 10 of their neighbors to inform that questionnaire, and when the questionnaire comes back out, that same person gives it back to their 10 neighbors. You might be a precinct captain. And 30 people, you can get 30 people to fill out your questionnaire. You share the Google document or the whatever mechanism we're using. People fill it out and send it back in. You help disseminate it, and you host your own private Zoom meeting to get your questions, and you submit them to this committee to make sure that your community, your block is heard. Maybe you want something on your block that's different for the next block. Maybe Roxbury needs something that's different in Nubian Square that's different from Mattapan Square. But it needs to be on the questionnaire. So maybe the two questions come together and the body figures out how to word it so that they have to answer these questions. Now, when that questionnaire goes back, you have something measurable. And again, you're not asking things that the mayor cannot do. You're asking specific things. Like, for instance, every year, for a long time I remember, the young people in our communities marched down to the State House and marched down to City Hall to ask for more money for summer jobs. And every year, we know that we don't get enough. I'm gonna pause for a second because I want to answer that question. Survey fatigue, that's a real thing. I know people are tired of Zooms. We're tired of, being campaigned to. We're tired of being lied to and led astray, right? However, this is bigger than us. So, I don't really have my only answer is sometimes you have to push that aside. Sometimes you have to realize that you have to make a sacrifice for the greater community, because we can either complain for the next 10, 12 years about who the mayor is, or we can sacrifice and get it right this time, or feel like we are included this time and create a new level of community power in our neighborhoods that we haven't seen. That's a question that could come onto the survey. How do we change? Would you be in favor of changing, not only changing the city charter, but a specific question about would you change how the city council can weigh in on the budget process? But let me go back to the youth example. Let's say the city of Boston funds youth jobs at $5 million a year, and that only hires 10,000 young people in the summer. And we know that actually what we feel they need is $10 million a year. The question on the questionnaire would say, would you fund youth jobs in your first year of 2022 at a level of $10 million? Now, it doesn't matter where you got to get the money from. If you got to rob Peter to pay Paul, if you got to defund the police, if you got to take it from the snow budget, if you got to move it from somewhere, you as a candidate for mayor have to tell the community that you promise to fund this line item at $10 million. Either you do it now. When you say you're going to do it, you get the endorsement of the community. Everybody gets behind this candidate. So let me slow down a little bit. I don't want to get ahead of myself. The questionnaire comes back to the community. One candidate has agreed to 20 out of 30 things the community asked. The other candidate has agreed to 25 out of 30 things that the community asked. At some point, you have to make a leap of faith. They both could be, and I'm not accusing these two women, I'm just using them as an example. When I say both now, I'm speaking hypothetically, both, just whatever two candidates. They both could be lying. They both could get in office and say, I changed my mind. And it happens. When I was in the State House, I saw state reps sign up for a questionnaire and say they're going to vote one way and then vote another way. But what happened was that union or that group, they showed up. They were at the State House on the night we were voting on the bill. They're in the lobby with signs like, we remember you, we're going to remember you lied to us, and next time the election comes, you're done. And that's what accountability looks like. Accountability can't just be a catchphrase that we use and say we need to start holding people accountable. There has to be a method of holding people accountable. There got to be a carrot that motivates them or a stick that punishes them when they don't do what they're going to say. Right? For those that read the good book, it's, you don't want to spare the rod and spoil the child. Sometimes you have to use the rod on the candidates too. So you're giving them this leap of faith that you're going to support them based on the way they answered this questionnaire. Whoever they answered the questionnaire the best, and you believe their answers because they said that they would do something, and they also maybe they could outline how they would do it. Right? So they're not going to just say I would do X, Y, and Z. But you're gonna the follow-up question might be, and how do you plan to do it, or when do you plan to do it? If you're gonna have your cabinet be 50% people of color, by what date in your tenure? Is it gonna be in your first 100 days, or is it gonna be for your first 2 years, and then you tip it back, and it's no longer reflective of the city? If you promise that you're going to improve the trades in Madison Park, By when are you going to do that? Are you going to keep a headmaster there for longer than a year? Are you actually going to bring the union program in there? When are you going to do it by? How are you going to do it? You know, you might ask for some details so that you can actually believe that they can keep this promise. Now, if they lie, or if they don't keep their word, or they fall short, it's incumbent upon the people, and I can't stress this enough, like I said in the opening. The power is in the people. It's not in the elected official. You don't hire or elect the elected official and then close your eyes and hope for the best. That's not how it works. You give them if it's a city councilor, you give them a 2-year term. If it's a mayor, they have a 4-year contract with you. They come back 4 years later to renew your contract. And let me tell you again, this is how it works, because as a state rep and seeing city council, I've worked in city council buildings and city hall, I've worked in the state house. They remember how you vote. They record how you vote. It is public record. You can look it up. If you want to take the time to do the work, if the community work means enough to you, you'll look it up and see if they voted the way they said they were going to vote when that vote came up. And when you burn a group, they remember, and that's their job to come back and burn you. So after 4 years, when Madison is not running to its full capacity, when the trades haven't improved their partnerships there, when they still don't have a headmaster or it keeps turning over and over, when the clearance rate of homicides is not improving, when community relationships with police is not improving, then you have to decide as a community and as individuals whether you renew that contract. Now, if you renew that contract, you're basically telling that person, hey, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. We thought we had you. We don't have the time. We're too tired. We're too worn down to really hold your feet to the fire. You know what? Just roll over us like you've been rolling over us, and we'll go on social media and we'll complain about you. And then when you get reelected, we'll put up some selfies with you, and we'll complain to our neighbors, and we'll complain to people that listen, but we ain't gonna do nothing because we tired. You have the option to do that. Or you can say, nah, you blew it. And even though we know this next person running, we don't really know who they are, and we're kind of used to you, we got to go with the new person, because we need to set an example that if you betray us as a community, if you betray us on the issues that are most important to us, we will not support you. That's the stick. The carrot was answering these questions and you get our support. Whether you're the black candidate, whether you're the woman candidate, whether you're the white Irish candidate, whether you're the Asian American candidate, the carrot is your vote and how many votes we get you if you fill out this form, right? If you fill out this, if you promise to do these things and show us to do these things, we will continue to vote for you. That's the carrot. The stick is we will take our vote back. And that's where the community, those are community responsibilities. And so often we do not take the vote back. We talk about accountability, but the accountability part becomes our responsibility to make sure that we do what we have to do. So let me slow down and make sure I'm keeping this as open dialogue. I don't want to be long. You know, I don't want to be long. So Thelma, how you doing? Long time no see. I think visuals and that breakdown help too, break down the needs of specific needs of communities and the votes at the local level. Then look at budget where the money is. Yes. So data is important. Now there's some of us that are like really wonky. I use the term wonky. Like we live, like I said, we live, eat, and breathe data. We want to see the budget line items. We want to see where it's going to. And then some of us aren't. Some of us just need visuals to break it down on a more basic level. And that's fine. Not everybody's going to be, not everybody's going to be at the same level. But that's where we have to start trusting. We have to start empowering those in our community, and those that are empowered need to be honest, open, accessible, and transparent about serving. Now, let me pivot. That's a great segue for me, Thelma. Thank you for that. We have nonprofits in our community. We have, and I'm just naming these as examples because this is what we have. We have the NAACP. We have the Urban League of Massachusetts and Young Professional Network. We have a lot. We have a lot of nonprofits that are membership driven and also volunteer driven. So it's not like, the executive director can just say, hey, do this. But those memberships, those members of those groups, I believe they have the same responsibility as the rest of us in the community. And we need to share that information and make sure that we're doing some of that work. If a committee comes together, then no one gets burnt out. Like, to speak to that point about fatigue, if people come together and everybody does a little bit, that's what's the old adage, if everybody does a little bit, nobody got to do a lot. So if we're creating these circles where, okay, we're going to break down the data, we're going to look at data for youth, we're going to look at data for civic engagement, we're going to look at data, we're going to help, not just talk to you about election years, but we're going to keep continuing to do voter registration drives day in and day out. Every Saturday of every month, there's a new committee, there's a new group that comes out, memberships come out, and get people to register to vote. That's the kind, and use the community centers. Like, these are the things, the creative ideas that we need to empower each other to do, and make sure that we're using all of our tools. It can't just be an election year and we're coming and then we say the electeds got to do it. I mean, I believe the electeds should be doing civic engagement too. Nothing pisses me off more than when an elected official who's been an incumbent for 5 or 10 years says, oh, my district doesn't have good civic engagement. Well, what you've been doing for 5, 10 years, if you've been in office, challenged or unchallenged, that you haven't increased civic engagement? Have you been, has your elected official, state rep, city councilor, state senator, have they been holding town hall meetings every month? Have they been giving you an email newsletter or a paper newsletter in your mailbox? And I'm not just making these ideas up. Like, long before there was COVID and long before there was Zoom, when I was working in the State House, I would I'd write up a letter, and I would take it to the photocopier, and I would print 500, 1,000. I'm burning through the paper. And then I have a team of interns, and I'm telling you about the bills that are coming up. I'm asking you to call my office if you have any issues, or if you feel I have an opinion, and I'm putting it in your mailbox. And you're not used to getting it, but if I do that continuously, you'll start to be like, oh, I'm used to hearing from my elected official, not just when they want to vote, but to give me information that make my life better. I know who to call if I need rental assistance. I know who to call if I need my street cleaned. I know who to get the call to get that vacant lot that has the tires and the trash and where the addicts are hanging out. I know who to call and get advocacy for that. That's civic engagement. But that has to come from the elected officials, and it has to come from the people. The elected officials ain't going to do it if you don't got the carrot or the stick. They're getting paid. If you let them put their feet up, they're going to put their feet up. Just like if your boss let you put your feet up, you would put your feet up too. Don't expect it to be any different than the elected officials. I mean, that's the process that I'm hoping Boston can start to embrace, especially the communities of Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, East Boston, the communities that have been marginalized, the communities that have survived and have been suppressed under systemic racism for decades and decades and decades. And we continue to say, oh, we got to fight this, and we got to elect the right people to fight this. It ain't just the elected officials. It's what the people do. It's what we, the people, do. You know what I'm saying? It's like a dating relationship or any relationship. You got to set some boundaries. People are only going to do what you allow them to do. You know what I mean? What in the famous words of George Bush, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, can't get fooled again. You know what I'm saying? You let people fool you the second time, that's on you. That's not on the elected official. You can't be like, oh, the elected officials. You re-elected them. Your neighbor re-elected them. So talk to your neighbors. I'm raising my hand. I'm telling you, a lot of these people that are on here, my question is, how do we get young people into hip to politics early? That's a good question. I know other people are doing it. I know that Priscilla Flint, who was on here, is launching a civic engagement academy specifically around engaging young people. So that's one thing. Priscilla, if you could put that in the comments, that would be good for people that want to link that way. I am teaching a class for people that want to get into electoral politics, which is a little bit different, is a little bit more specific, and it has some small cost to it. But in terms of the civic engagement and kind of civic 101, I'll also be volunteering at Priscilla Flint, with Priscilla Flint and others in the BG group, which is the Black Economic Justice Initiative, to make sure that we are training young people. So people should pay attention to that. I believe it's named after a young man by the name of Marcus Hall, who was a Boston resident, who was killed in the city of Boston, but it's named in his honor. But there are civic engagement initiatives that will be opening to teach young people to it, about politics, because it affects them. It affects the quality of their schools. It affects whether they got soap and water in their bathrooms. It affects whether they got to keep their windows open on a 40-degree day to get ventilation to stay away from COVID. It affects whether they got clean drinking water and a good temperature that they can actually learn in. It affects what the curriculum is in their building, whether they're still learning lies like Christopher Columbus was Italian and discovered America in 1492, instead of telling the truth that he was Portuguese, sailed under the Spanish flag, and that there was people already here for 1,000 years before he got here. Like, you know what I'm saying? Brother Malcolm explained this to us, right? He told us, do not let your enemy educate your children. So this is why we need to empower our own. This is why we need to own our vote. As much as people have been disenfranchised and feel like the vote doesn't matter, you're wrong. If we are going to battle systemic racism, then we have to be battling the system. Politics is the system. The system is codified by law. The law are made by politicians. You either elect or sit aside on the sideline and watch these people that make the laws get elected. You cannot do both. You cannot say you're fighting systemic racism, but you ain't going to participate in civics and politics. Somebody explain how that makes sense, because it doesn't make sense to me, and which is exactly why I got into politics, because I wanted to make sure that I was playing the game. I wanted the power to come back to my community. So now Jay is telling me that I'm cutting in and out. There we go. I'm sorry if I'm cutting in and out. I'll keep an eye on when it does. I'll pause in between if I see that my connection goes. But what I was saying is, if that's the only way we're going to fight systemic racism, I mean, there's a lot of places you can fight it, but we need fighters in politics. Politics is where people decide policy. Policy is what makes law. It's what makes budgets. That is where the system enacts racism. And so if we're going to battle it, that's one of the forums where we need to battle it. And it's going to take all of us. It's a numbers game. It's like building an army. The more votes you have, the more power you have. You know what I mean? So until we start using it together, and until we start to kind of create a baseline that we all share, it's going to be tough. There we go. Priscilla just put the link in the page. The Marcus Hill Civics Engagement Academy is for young people. But let's start to build now in our communities around this race. If you can, try not to be pulled into the cult of personality and popularity. Wait until your community can cut a deal. Something has to come back to your community for your vote. Jobs, budgets, contracts. What do we get? 2% of a $6 billion contract that came out of the city of Boston. We got 1 or 2%. Imagine if we got 10 or 15%. You know how many more kids that sends to college? You know how many homes that keeps out of foreclosure? You know how many more small businesses open if you just get a sliver of that? A sliver. I'm not asking us to go from 2% to 80% because we're not even ready as a community to do that. But if we just got to 10 and 15%, and I don't mean a pledge of it, I mean to make sure it happens. We had a pledge of it 7 years ago, and we still at 2% 7 years later. And nobody used the stick in 2017, and nobody was going to use the stick in 2021. Let me say that again. You was promised, you know the promises you were made. You can Google them. You can look back in the Globe and read the comments between candidates in 2013. You know, I mentioned some of them in this live if you was paying attention. You know the promises that you were made, and you know where they were kept. But regardless of whether they were kept, for whatever reason, you decided not to use the stick. Maybe you have a maybe you have a fear of confrontation. I don't know. But we had 34 minutes. I don't like going longer than that. I just wanted to plant that seed. That's all. I'm going to be in Chip's conversation tomorrow. It's a Zoom meeting. He has Chip Greenwich. I mean, most people, whether you know house music, black colleges, you know, he's the big, gigantic dude from Cambridge that everybody knows, the first one to get like 7,000 people on his Facebook page 15 years ago. But he does a good job of convening. I say that tongue-in-cheek, the joke, but he does a good job of bringing people together. Chip knows a lot of people. He uses his network to bring people together. So, you know, let's join these conversations. The more of us that are like-minded, that are in these same spaces, we hold each other accountable and we build our reach further and further through our constituencies. How do you get to deal with a single-digit voter turnout in our communities? Explain to them why it's important to vote. That's it. Explain. They're going to make a personal decision. I don't think we ever get single-digit voter turnout. I mean, I don't think it's that low, brother, but I understand your point. We have low voter turnout at times. Some people aren't even aware. So we'll deal with it when we are comfortable going out and knocking on their door. When we're comfortable going out and putting a flyer on their car and in their mailbox to remind them, that's how we deal with it. Right, Cliff knows about that. Cliff been out there, flyers on doors, flyers on mailbox. I got a Boston Political podcast. Thank you for bringing that up, Thelma. I do a Sunday show called The Public Service Announcement. It's on Spark FM Online every Sunday at 10 a.m., from 10 a.m. to 12. I do podcasts, not as often now that I'm doing radio, but I'll do some more of that, and I'm looking to do some work. You'll hear from me, hopefully Darren Howell soon, Christian White, who has some great questions. We're probably going to ask him to do some interviews, because I hate getting into this monologue. I feel like I'm just rambling. So it's better when someone asks me a question and I can respond to it. And there's a couple other people who I want to build with, make sure we have some women who have been, have some boots on the ground and some skin in the game, to make sure we have that balance going on as well. And there's several powerful women in this group, just on this podcast, that I talk to regularly about politics and that are building with. So the tent is big. It's open. I'm willing to play a part. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. Again, I'm not pledged to any mayoral candidate. I'm not paid by any mayoral candidate. If for some reason that were to change, I'll be the first one to tell you, like, listen, y'all got to take this over, because I gotta eat to feed my kids, to feed the fam or help pay the bills. So, but until then, I'm all for this community thing, and that's kind of why I call myself, do it still repping, because this work is important, whether we're in office, out of office, whether we're working or not working. This is the work that we have to do if we are going to see actual change, if we're going to move beyond lip service. We cannot. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Now I'm getting mad at I'm about to call my internet provider, because I don't like the fact that my joint keep cutting in and out. I'm going to say goodnight. Yes, Christian White has a dope. Thank you for bigging that up. I've been meaning to big you up more. You put out so much good material. I'm behind on listening to learn. Christian White has a podcast series where he really engages a segment that never gets engaged. Look at that. People who really need to be engaged, he talks to them, and you can learn a lot from listening to Learn, which is a group that a podcast that he runs. Priscilla is asking me to tell you folks that the BG Report, oh yeah, that's right, I'll be on 102.9 Boston Praise Radio, 102.9 FM this Thursday at 8 a.m. talking more about Boston politics, talking more about what happens. Will Dickerson, let me read your comment. Regardless of how people vote, we can't allow this election to divide us. We must agree to disagree. You're right. But that's why I believe that more importantly than agree to disagree, let's use the energy to come together and create a baseline that we can agree on. And it doesn't have to be, I don't expect every single person to be in lockstep, but we need a critical mass. You know what I mean? We need a critical mass of people to at least agree on what the issues are and what are the drivers, what are the most important things to tackle in prioritizing those issues. So until we get to there, there's going to be disagreement. I'm okay with conflict. I'm not averse to conflict. That's the way of the universe. Planets hit each other, stars hit each other, alligators and lions eat zebras, zebras eat grass. It's the circle of life. I'm okay with conflict. But I also want to make sure that there's a resolution. There's got to be a resolution at the end. So I don't expect anything to come easy. I expect this to be some heavy work, which is why I called on a lot of you today. Why I mentioned James Mackey is because he's already leading an effort similar to this called Enough Boston in Enough Massachusetts, where he's compiling things and issues and policy measures that are important to black people and black communities. Oh, I'm so frustrated at my internet connection right now. My gosh. Hold on, let me just see if I just want to try to tweak my internet connection for a second so I can wrap up. Crazy. Pay all this money All right, let's see if it comes back. Pay all this money to Comcast for the. Can anybody hear me? So someone comment if you can hear me, because I don't feel like I'm just talking. Okay, now I just wanted to switch. I pay all this money for Comcast. I can't be having it switching in and out. They're about to get rashed on tomorrow. Shout out to Brianna. What I was saying was that James is compiling issues that are important to black communities, not just in Boston, but across Massachusetts. And so those of us that do this work, if we can come together, if we can facilitate this work for our communities, I think it will go a long way. And I'm volunteering for it because I have experience building these coalitions. I have experience with policy. I know there's a lot of talent in this group and beyond. I'm reaching out to others. So anyone you can think of that should be a part of it, please. I am using a Chromebook. It's an old one. I need to get a new one. It's an Ultrabook. I think it's a little bit better than a Chromebook. It's an Ultrabook, but it's at least 10 years old, so it's like a dinosaur. But it's just the internet connection was a little funny. But I'm glad y'all can hear me. And now I'm going to wrap up soon. So I'm just taking comments or questions before we wrap up. I really just want to share what other people are doing in the community. Again, let me just run it back. Right, I'm on 102.9 FM Boston Praise Radio on Thursday at 8 a.m. I need you to check out Christian White's Listening to Learn series to learn about what people are really going through, the people that we forget about that need the most services, and what we're really going through. You can learn a lot from those series in terms of what we should be offering in our communities and neighborhood as people and individuals. James Mackey is leading an effort called Enough Boston. And I want to shout out both Brianna and Carlita. You know, they were doing a series. I know they've taken a short hiatus, but I know they'll be back to it. I think it was called, I forgot half of it, Uplift and, throw me the lob, Brianna, Uplift and something. But they do great work together, and as soon as they post it, I'll shout it out. Yahira's doing some great work convening around Methadone Mile and Mass and Cass, the South End Roxbury network, making sure that people are paying attention to what's been going on for 7 years that nobody's paid attention to, and it's only been getting worse year after year after year. Uplift and Impact, thank you, Ms. Malore, thank you, Carlita. Dynamite people, just in this group right here. And that energy, James, this is what I feel, right? I'm glad you said that. I feel like once we get the ball rolling, the momentum just keeps building. You know what I mean? We just got to get the snowball. We got to get the critical mass, right? Once you get the landslide to be big enough, it can't stop. But we just never get it big enough so it has enough momentum to keep rolling. But we can get it there, and once we get it there, it'll just start to roll up everything with it. And we'll understand our community, we'll understand our power, and once we understand our power, the young people, the culture in our community will change, and young people will be raised in a community where they're used to flexing their power. They're used to seeing people knock on doors and talk to their neighbors and have community conversations. Like I remember, I'm dating myself, but I remember, meeting Mel King when I was 8 years old when he was running for mayor in '83, right? Because I lived in the South End as a kid. My parents were around the Harriet Tubman house, and that's the conversations were going on. I couldn't walk down the street with mom and dad without them having a 10-minute conversation every couple of steps down the street. Let's get back to that. I thank y'all for your time. I'm not going over 45 minutes. On dogs, I'm not going over 45 minutes. So I want to say good night. Please catch me on Spark FM Online. That's my last plug. Spark FM Online, we talk about not having black-owned media, independent media. We have two. Of course, I got to big up Spark FM Online because that's where I am, but I also want to big up Boston Praise Radio because they're doing it too on 102.9 FM. And they're two totally different stations, two totally different flavors, but they give you independent media. They give you our voice for us, by us. And so that's important. And tomorrow's event, like I said, it's online. It's after the State of the City address that the mayor holds. Chip Greenwich is convening a Zoom meeting. It's called The Greatest Minds, Who's Going to Be Our Next Mayor. He's a good promoter. You'll see it on his page and probably plenty of others. He's tagged like 230 of us already. So look for that. And just let's continue to be in this conversation. It's at 44 minutes and 19 seconds. I'm out. I love y'all. It's about us.